We need to stand steadfast for Israel because Hamas, who made the attack October 7th, has had a sworn purpose, one and only sworn purpose since their existence, and that is to wipe the nation of Israel totally off the map. They've never disavowed that. It is the only reason for their existence. They made an aggressive attack in the Gaza area on October 7th. They killed innocent civilians, men, women, and children. They have taken Israeli and American captives. Unless we back Prime Minister Netanyahu in his effort to completely eliminate Hamas, to wipe them off the face of the earth, to wipe this group whose only purpose is to destroy Israel off the face of the earth, we will have aggression from Hamas and from Iran's other proxies in the future. So I support Prime Minister Netanyahu. I condemn Hamas for violating almost every tenet of international law. They take civilians and prisoners of war and use them as human shields, an absolute violation of the laws of war. They should be prosecuted for that if we can capture them, but if not, they need to be completely rooted out. We need to end the terrorist threat to one of our steadfast allies for some 70 years. We welcome, as a Republican conference, House and Senate, we welcome the Prime Minister of our great ally to the United States Congress today.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. Senator Budd.
Well, good morning, and thank you for being here. Senator Ernst, thanks for your leadership on this issue, and I thank my colleagues as well. We want to first of all thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for coming. We welcome him to Washington, D.C., but I'd like you all to note who has not welcomed him to Washington, D.C., and that is Vice President Kamala Harris. And I want you also to note who is not doing her constitutional duties to attend the speech today, and that is Vice President Kamala Harris. So let's be clear. I don't think that snubbing our Middle East ally does what we need to do to stop the Hamas terrorists. Let's remember 292 days ago, these same Hamas terrorists, they committed horrific acts of barbarism and of kidnapping. Now, 8 of the remaining hostages being held in Gaza, they're Americans. And one of them is a native of my home state in North Carolina, and that's Keith Siegel with his wife, Aviva. About 50 days after October 7th, she was released. And thank goodness she is telling the story to the rest of the world. But her husband, Keith, from North Carolina, is still 292 days later being held captive. So now these 8 innocent souls, they should be at the top. These 8 Americans, they should be at the top of our national conscience. And every American should know their names. But instead we see people, even some Americans, sadly, blaming Israel, pressuring Israel, and one American not showing up for Israel today. It's unconscionable. What Hamas has done and is still doing, it's absolutely evil. So I think it's time for us to regain our moral compass, and it's time for officials like Vice President Harris to show up and fully support Prime Minister Netanyahu. So it's time to apply maximum pressure on Hamas to release the hostages and to release Keith Siegel. And it's long past time to bring them all home. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Budd. Senator Brett.
Thank you, Senator Ernst, for organizing this important press conference. Today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will come before Congress to ask us for help. America has a responsibility. We have an obligation to keep our promises, and we have to show that never again actually means never again. Failure to do so will mean that we will let down our tremendous ally, and we will look weak once again on the world stage. We must stand strongly with Israel and show her the support, not just in normal times, but in trying times when she needs us the most. I think it's a shame that Vice President Harris won't be here, literally won't be here, standing with Israel today. She isn't presiding over or attending Prime Minister Netanyahu's address. And look, to be honest, she doesn't have many jobs as the vice president. She was put in charge of our border. We know she failed at that responsibility. She was supposed to fill in for the president during ceremonial times. She failed to greet Prime Minister Netanyahu when he landed in the United States. And she's expected to preside over joint sessions in which foreign leaders of Congress are present. Once again, she's failing at that too. Time and time again, she has chosen not to do her job. But now she's asking the American people for a promotion. Let's be clear, the vice president could be here today if she wanted to. She has chosen not to fulfill her duty. Instead, she's at a conference. Look, I am all for her attending a conference. The conference lasts 5 days. Does anybody in this room think that if she had told the people in the conference that she, the Vice President of the United States, would like to address them, but just needed to adjust her time, that they wouldn't have allowed her to do that? They absolutely would. She's choosing not to be here today. She could have fulfilled her obligation. Once again, the Biden-Harris administration is sending exactly the wrong message, a message that is sure to further embolden our adversaries. It's past time to reestablish credibility in the American deterrence and for America to provide Israel with everything she needs to permanently end the threat of Hamas. Strength is the path to sustainable peace, not weakness or appeasement. Make no mistake, Israel has more than a right to defend herself. She has an obligation to do so. America can and must help Israel fulfill that mission, help bring every single hostage home, and help bring about sustainable peace through strength. It is time we use every tool in our toolbox, including those that will help dry up Iran financially. We've done it before under the Trump administration, and we can do it again. Today and every day, Senate Republicans proudly stand with Israel.
Thank you, Senator Britt. Thank you. Senator Cornyn.
Well, thank you, Senator Ernst, for arranging for this press conference. It could not be more important. On October the 7th of last year, Hamas terrorists, supported by the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world, Iran, Hamas attacked and killed more than 1,000 innocent Israelis. They also took 251 hostages, and over 100 hostages are still in the custody of Hamas under this network of tunnels that they built under Gaza. 8 of those are American citizens. 8 American citizens are still in the hands of this terrorist organization sponsored by Iran. And of course, we know that Israel, our #1 ally in the Middle East, the only democracy really, is under attack not only from the south, from Gaza through Hamas, but also Hezbollah in the north and the Houthis in Yemen. This is a fight for Israel's very existence. And it's in our national security interest to support our friend and ally in the Middle East against an aggressor nation like Iran, which, oh, by the way, in addition to being the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, is working toward developing a nuclear weapon, thanks to the policies of the Biden administration. That was virtually shut down under the previous administration through the extreme pressure campaign of the Trump presidency, but that's all been virtually reversed, and all the sanctions that have been put in place to dry up the money so that Iran could not continue to pay these terrorist organizations has been replenished and replaced, thanks to the policies of the Biden administration. But the Vice President of the United States has a responsibility to attend these speeches in the joint session in the House of Representatives. I have been here quite a while. I don't remember any occasion previously where the Vice President hasn't shown up, along with the Speaker. And this is a demonstration of respect, a demonstration of our alliance, a demonstration of our commitment to democracies in regions of the world which are among the most dangerous and volatile. And the Vice President of the United States doesn't have the common courtesy to even show up. It's disgraceful. She ought to be embarrassed. Unfortunately, it's not just Israel that's reading the tea leaves here. It's these aggressors who, when they sense weakness or lack of resolve or lack of commitment to our allies, it does nothing but encourage them to do more because they think they can break our will and they think they can break the will of our allies like Israel. It's absolutely disgraceful. And I hope, I guess time is running short, but I hope that the Vice President would reconsider.
Senator Cassidy.
Thank you, and I thank Benjamin Netanyahu for coming here to the United States. It's important for us to hear firsthand from the person who leads the nation that is on the line. I had the privilege, the responsibility, of going to Israel in the first congressional delegation after the attack. And the nation, which is kind of used to terrorism, was shocked by this. To put it in perspective, if you scaled up, our population is so much bigger than Israel's. They lost 1,300 people. That would have been the equivalent of 40,000 Americans dead in one attack, unprovoked, by someone who had been, if you will, making motions that they would be at peace. They had the same shock as we had after 9/11. And our message to Prime Minister Netanyahu is that you stood with us after 9/11, and we will stand with you after October the 7th. Now, Hamas targets civilians, children, infants. They are the ones who are the killers. In contrast, Israel wants to protect their people, and that's the difference. I cannot stress enough, there is no moral equivalency between Israel and Hamas. Hamas is the aggressor, they are the terrorists, they are those who even now embed their leadership within a civilian population, knowing that Israel, if they wish to take out that Hamas leadership, will be forced to have, that there might indeed be civilian deaths. But that is Hamas bringing upon those civilians. Now, that's not the only thing we're battling. There's anti-Semitism here in the United States, and we've seen this rampant anti-Semitism at colleges nationwide. No student should fear, as she or he walks around the campus, that they are endangered just because they're going to class. Now, these anti-Israel protesters are not singing Kumbaya. They're chanting slogans known to mean the obliteration of the nation of Israel. That's why we have introduced the Restoring Civility on Campus Act, ensuring that universities and the Biden-Harris administration immediately addresses civil rights complaints if a student experiences violence or harassment on a campus because of their heritage. I thank Senator Ernst for co-leading this bill, and I thank her as well for co-hosting this. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
So I look forward to hearing from Prime Minister Netanyahu today. Like a lot of us, I had the opportunity to visit Israel. I went in March. I went to a village that I'd been to before, Kfar Aza, where 63 individuals were killed. Little kids were murdered. The stories were just horrible. They're half a mile from Gaza. So it's clear what has to happen here. Israel needs to win. Hamas needs to be destroyed. What's disappointing is the Biden administration has not been in support of Israel. Democrats have not been in support of Israel. Vice President Harris has not been in support of Israel. We can't forget the hostages, American hostages that are there. In my office, we have a picture of all the hostages up outside my office. We put information out about them and their families every day. We can't forget what's happened. I look forward to hearing from Prime Minister Netanyahu of how the war is going, how they're going to destroy Hamas, what they need from America. When I was over there in March, what they were telling me is American support. It's not just that they need our military weapons, but they need our verbal support. And unfortunately, this administration is not doing it. I can't believe Vice President Harris is not showing up today. It's a slap in the face to the only democracy in the Middle East, our greatest ally in the Middle East, somebody that needs our support. It doesn't make any sense. But Republicans in the House and Senate, we're going to show up. We're going to do everything we can to help the state of Israel, help all of our constituents that are Jewish, stop this anti-Semitism. And I look forward to standing with my Republican colleagues at this joint session, doing everything we can to support Israel.
Thank you, Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Senator Ernst. On October 7, 2023, Hamas terrorists led an unprovoked attack on Israel that resulted in the death of at least 1,400 people, including 1,300 Israelis and at least 30 Americans, along with taking the hundreds of hostages, including 14 Americans. The attack of October the 7th has led to the death of 38 Americans, and at least 5 Americans remain in captivity. When's the last time we heard the names of these hostages? When's the last time you've heard anything from the president or vice president about empathy or concern for these hostages? It amazes me that this White House demands peace arrangements, peace talks in Israel, but yet there's no talk of a peace agreement in Ukraine. From my vantage point, what I see the White House is not a profile in courage, but rather a profile in fear and political cowardice. I want to remind Americans why this is important, that America has a very special relationship with Israel. It's characterized by strong political, military, and economic ties. It's rooted in shared democratic values, strategic interests, and cultural connections. And most importantly, this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian values. What we see out of the White House are empty words and very few actions. I want to remind everybody back home what President Trump did for Israel. In 2017, he recognized Jerusalem as the capital and moved the embassy there. In 2019, he recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. In 2020, he brokered the Abraham Accords. He's defunded UNRWA. He financially broke the back of Iran. He got us out of the horrific Iran nuclear deal as well. What we need is unwavering leadership in the White House where our enemies fear us. This attack would have never have happened if Donald Trump was still the president. This is one more symptom of a weak president and vice president. Today I stand before you with resolute conviction that justice must prevail. The state of Israel has every right, and actually they've got a duty, a moral imperative to hold Hamas accountable for its actions. This is an organization that has consistently chosen violence and terror over peace and coexistence. Hamas actions are not just an affront to Israel, but to humanity itself, and specifically to America as they chant death to America. To all those who cry out for restraint, I would say this: would you stand idly by if your own children were under threat? Would you ask for calm if your own towns were targeted by an enemy that celebrates your suffering? Israel's actions are not just about security, they're about justice. They're about ensuring that terror cannot and will not dictate our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we will have Senator Young.
Good afternoon. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas murdered over 1,000 Israeli citizens. This was the single greatest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust. And make no mistake, the Holocaust was the very inspiration for this attack. In the immediate aftermath of these unspeakable acts, these evil acts, the American people, Congress, the White House, Republicans and Democrats, here on the Hill and throughout the country, came together in solidarity and sympathy and in their expressions of support for the Israeli state and the Israeli people. And in the 9 months since, the state of Israel did exactly what you would expect any self-respecting state to do. They've waged war. They've fiercely waged war. They've asserted their rights. They've been protecting their people. And they've done what is necessary to try and prevent these sorts of evil acts from occurring again. In the course of these efforts, these justified and understandable responses, they've been under fire from Iran, other proxies, and also from anti-Semites from around the world, including a handful in this country. So on the occasion of Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit, it's really important, I think, for all of us, Republicans and Democrats, elected officials, and rank-and-file Americans, to reaffirm our support for the state of Israel, their leaders, and their people. We stood with our ally on October 7th, and we stand with her still today. The vast majority of Americans do. I can't speak for the Biden-Harris administration. I will say in the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of October 7th, many Republicans rightly praised the administration's response. They seem to offer steadfast support for our ally. In the months since, however, we've seen that support wane. To use Margaret Thatcher's memorable phrase, we've perhaps seen things go a bit wobbly. This administration has withheld congressionally approved aid from the IDF. They've extended Hamas lifelines under the guise of peace plans. They've undermined Prime Minister Netanyahu and prioritized placating the radicals in its political base. We've seen President Biden be too slow again and say too little in the condemnation of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic mobs on our college campuses, while Vice President Harris, who I gather hasn't prioritized a visit from the Prime Minister of Israel in the middle of an existential war, Vice President Harris has spoken approvingly of these very mobs, of these elements. Former Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir once told President Ford during a meeting in the Oval Office, "I will fight not to have Israel sacrificed to the good of mankind, because it would not be for the good of mankind." Half a century later, that fight goes on. The Jewish state remains, and it will remain. And mankind will be better because of it, and the United States of America must continue to have solidarity with the people in the state of Israel in that process. Israel can always count on me and the folks up here for America's friendship and support.
Thank you, Senator Young. Senator Mullen.
You know, there's been a lot of talk about everything up here so far, and what's left to really visit about. The question is, why are we here? Why do we stand right here in front of you to begin with? Because we shouldn't. Really, if this administration was doing their job and standing with our allies, we wouldn't be having this press conference. So why aren't they here? Was Israel not with us after 9/11? Did other countries come after us and condemn us for attacking those that attacked us? For going and hunting the terrorist organizations that came after us? Did anybody condemn us for that? Yeah. Iran did. Other terrorist states did. Terrorist organizations did. They cried foul. Did our allies stand with us, though? Yes. Did they fight beside us? Yes. We should be outraged. The United States should be outraged. There should be no daylight between us. We got attacked the same as Israel got attacked. They killed 35 Americans. They still hold 5 American hostages. Why the hell isn't President Biden and President Harris standing here with us? Why wouldn't they give the Prime Minister all the support they have? Because if you're not standing with the Prime Minister, there isn't a choice to be neutral here. We don't have that choice. If we are not standing with the Prime Minister, that means we are condemning their actions and emboldening Hamas, a terrorist organization. These people that are out here protesting, they've got it wrong. This fight isn't against the Palestinian people. Israel's not attacking the West Bank. It's attacking Gaza because Gaza was ran by Hamas, and the people that chose to live chose. They weren't put in Gaza. They chose to live in Hamas. They chose to live underneath the rule of Hamas, a terrorist organization. They chose to ignore what was going on literally underneath their feet. They made that decision. They chose to raise their families in there. Bad things happen in war. For those that have had the disprivilege of seeing it, hearing it, and unfortunately tasting it, we know bad things happen in war. Israel didn't choose this fight. Hamas chose this for them. They're choosing to defend it and eliminate the threat, the same as the United States did. There's no excuse for this administration behaving the way they are, other than what? There's an extreme base of the Democrat Party that they're wanting their votes. They want to appease them. Somebody else answer the question, because I can't. I can't make sense of it. Why we wouldn't be standing with Israel, because we always said we stood with Israel. Why aren't we still standing with Israel? Guys, I'm dumbfounded as much as anybody and aggravated as more than most. Israel has a right to defend themselves, and I can assure you where the Republican Party is. We're standing right beside them and willing to fight with them.
Thank you, Senator Mullen. Senator Hyde-Smith.
I just want to say how much I appreciate my colleagues that you've heard from, that we're unified on this, because this is the right thing to do. I look forward to welcoming the Prime Minister this afternoon. And let's be very clear, the U.S.-Israeli partnership is critical to U.S. security. How simple can this be? And I want it known that the Senate Republicans remain firmly by Israel's side, even as the Biden-Harris administration fails in their duties to do this. I'm like Senator Mullins. I can't answer this. It makes no sense whatsoever. Israel has every right to defend itself against enemies that threatens its very existence. The unprovoked attack on October the 7th, unprovoked. One of the hardest things that I've had to do as a U.S. Senator is watch the uncut, unfiltered footage of that attack, of a child sitting in the high chair while his mother was reaching in the refrigerator to get him something, watching his mother be murdered from the high chair. This is real. This is a real experience we're going through. You may read about things. This is reality of what's happening right now. How we cannot stand with Israel is beyond any comprehension that I could have. I have met with a lot of these families. They've come over. We've had these discussions. It's things you will never forget in your lifetime. And not only is the administration failing these American citizens right here that you see on this poster, it's failing to protect the American citizens domestically as well. As we're here today, hearing the protesters outside of our door. I feel so sorry for these Jewish students who are afraid to walk across campus, who are afraid to go to class. That is a sad day in this country when we are having this, and they are truly experiencing this. And it's our job to protect these students. I mean, we know what turning our back on Israel is doing. It is totally emboldening our adversaries, something that this administration excels at. By Vice President Harris not being here tells me all I need to know about her, and it should tell the American people all that they need to know about her as well. Political games with the lives and the well-being of Israelis and Americans is just a failure, but it's reflected in the state and of the world around us. it is just hard to comprehend that you've got these people standing here behind me, unified as the Republicans, and the other side of the aisle. Really? You cannot defend Israel? Really? That is just beyond belief. Mississippians didn't send me here to turn my back on Israel. And I will continue to work with these great, strong colleagues that I have behind me as our ally in the Middle East, at home and abroad. And I would look forward to the day our president does the same thing that we're doing.
Thank you, Senator Hidsmith. Senator Hoban.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, the message from all of us is very clear. We need to support Israel. It's that simple. It's that straightforward. We need to support Israel. And that means as they work to defeat Hamas, and Hamas must be defeated, we shouldn't be telling them how to prosecute the war. They know how to prosecute the war. They're in the middle of it. They know how to deal with it. We need to support them, not second-guess them, and that's what the Biden-Harris administration is doing, and that's wrong. And that undermines their effort to do what they must do. And what they must do is defeat Hamas. That means completely destroying Hamas's military capability so that we don't have a repeat of what happened on October 7th. It's that simple. This isn't rocket science. Hamas must be defeated. So instead of this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, sitting back, second-guessing, and undermining that effort, they need to fully support Israel and defeat Hamas. And the other big point that we've got to recognize is that Iran is behind all of this. Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, they are proxies for Iran. What are we doing, going soft in terms of sanctions and other steps against Iran? We're not going to stop this terrorism that Iran supports around the globe unless we deal with Iran. So look, today we've got Prime Minister Netanyahu here. We all very much appreciate that. And we want to show the very strongest support for him and for Israel in this fight, this global fight on terror. And Israel's the tip of the spear. They're not just protecting themselves, they're protecting us. They're one of our closest allies. Support them. And let's get real. Let's get clear-eyed about Iran and their proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis and other terrorist organizations around the world that they support. And let's work with our allies, join with our allies, support our allies, not second-guess them, and defeat terror.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Hoban. Okay, we'll take questions for those that will be staying. Yes, ma'am.
There's been a lot of criticism of Vice President Kamala Harris for not being here today. Yesterday, two members of the House referred to her as a DEI candidate. I would like to comment on that, and also, has there been any criticism from J.D. Vance for being on the campaign trail today and not here?
Well, I'm not going to speak to what the House is saying, but I can state that not having the Vice President presiding over a joint session of Congress with our closest ally in the Middle East present, that's a disgrace. That is a disgrace. She is abdicating her duties now as Vice President. What is she going to do? And this will never happen, but should she become, hypothetically, President of the United States, what is she going to abdicate then? So I can state, I think all of us feel the same way here, is that she should be here. Whether she likes the Prime Minister of Israel or not, whether she respects him or not, she should be here. It is a disgrace. And just as Senator Hyde-Smith said, it tells you everything you need to know about her by her abdicating her duties today. With J.D. Vance, he is on the campaign trail. I understand that. He's not the sitting Vice President of the United States. And we have had many media outlets that have said J.D. Vance has shown a strong, strong level of commitment and support to the state of Israel. So his commitment to Israel is not questioned. But Vice President Harris and her pro-Hamas rhetoric tells us everything we need to know. And the fact that she has turned her back on her duties as Vice President of the United States, turned her back on Congress, and an invitation to our closest friend and ally of the Middle East.
Joni, can I?
Keep in
Yes.
mind, too, that J.D. and Trump, J.D. Vance and President Trump is meeting with the Prime Minister in Mar-a-Lago, too.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that Vice President Harris has an obligation to be here. It's her duty to be here. The real challenge about her candidacy is that, number one, she's been lying to Americans for 3 years about the president's mental health status, that he's not been all there cognitively. And then she is the border czar, over 11 million people crossing the border illegally. And she's complicit in Joe Biden's policies that have given us $6 a gallon gasoline, $4 a gallon milk. That she is a California progressive with a more liberal voting record than Bernie Sanders. That's the problem with her candidacy, and that's why America is going to reject her. And I go back again, let's compare and contrast what Donald Trump did for Israel versus what this administration has done for Israel. It is certainly day and night.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I was just wondering what all of you are hoping to hear from the Prime Minister specifically. Where are you hoping to hear for some sort of vision for how he would like to achieve peace in the region? If there's anything that you're looking for out of this.
No, I think that is an exceptional question. And I think each one of us will have different feelings on what we wish to hear today. Senator Joni Ernst would love to hear how we are going to achieve peace in the Middle East with our partner Israel. The Abraham Accords was a significant step forward under the Trump administration for stabilizing the Middle East and allowing partners to come together to push against Iran. How do we continue to build upon that, find a way to peace? That's one thing Israel needs to do, is find a way to peace. But that means the destruction of Hamas as well. We need to acknowledge that. And then what I personally hope to hear as well is how we bring our American hostages home. So this, let's see, Sagi right here, he is the grandson of Holocaust survivors. Grandson of Holocaust survivors. And he has been taken by Hamas. Let's see, well, we also, Omar's parents speak at the Republican National Convention. We heard a number of Republicans read the names of each one of our hostages. We have welcomed those families into our offices. They are in agony, not knowing if their loved ones are coming home. So I do hope we find a way to stability in the Middle East. We hear that from the Prime Minister on what his plans are. But I, in particular, also want to hear what the plan is to bring our American hostages home. And I welcome any other thoughts.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is a strong and experienced leader. And I think it's very important we hear from him as to exactly what's going on and where they are in terms of truly defeating Hamas and what else needs to happen for them to get that job done and how we can stand 100% behind them and help them do it. I think that's very strong, very important so that we understand it directly from him. And then all of the things that Senator Ernst said as well. But he's the one there that knows exactly what's going on, and we need to know exactly what's going on and how we can stand strong and help Israel get this job done and bring those hostages home, all these things. But he's the one that can tell us the straight story. And it's not just all of us that need to hear it. Americans need to hear it.
One of the things he'll be talking about is reminding us, and I think the world, particularly Americans, need to be reminded of what a great ally they are for us in the Middle East. The strongest, the only democracy in the Middle East, great innovators and a great ally. The second thing I think they're going to be talking about, the fact that part of his calculus is let's get all of the hostages returned, particularly the 8 Americans, whether they're alive or whether it is respectfully returning their remains. The other is talking about what has happened so far in the war, and that from talking to him in person, it has been a very cautious war, minimizing civilian casualties. And the mainstream media will pick up what Al Jazeera will say. They'll give the wrong numbers, completely biased against the state of Israel. So I think he'll correct the record and say how cautious he has been to minimize any civilian casualties, because that's certainly something that he wants to avoid and something that he deeply, deeply cares about. And I think the other thing is the path forward. What does it look like once he has gotten to a certain point in Gaza and there is security? What does it look like? How does he partner with others in the Middle East region for peace, for the enduring path forward?
Thank you. Yep, Roger.
I think it's really important that Prime Minister Netanyahu explained to Americans why this is important. Why is this relationship between America and the United States so important and so special? And I think beyond that, more specifically, I just want to reemphasize that this is important from a national security standpoint. It's important from a military cooperation standpoint, that we provide substantial military aid to Israel, ensuring its qualitative military edge in the Middle East, that we conduct joint military exercises, intelligence sharing, defense technology collaboration that strengthen both nations' security, that we work together on missile defense systems that will someday be very important to defending this country as well. We have many strategic interests in the Middle East as well, many economic interests as well. We're Israel's largest trade partner. We have strong bilateral trade investment flows. And our cooperation extends to high-tech industries, innovation, and research. So I want him to make that case, why this relationship is important, why it's been so fruitful, and then lastly, why it's important to Americans, to Kansans, to Iowans. Why is it important that we eliminate Hamas? Because they are a threat to Americans. They are the ones that are shouting death to America.
Thank you, Roger.
We've heard from many of these hostage families speaking to Congress this week. Some of these families have been a bit critical of Benjamin Netanyahu in this moment. The father of Sahi told the Foreign Affairs Committee yesterday, any true friend of Israel today must pressure our prime minister to finish the ceasefire deal now. Do you agree with that? And are you, in your conversations with Netanyahu, bringing some of these family concerns to the prime minister?
Yeah, absolutely. And believe me, all of us have spent a considerable amount of time with our hostage families. I was in Israel on October 10th. And that was when I first learned that we did have Americans that were being held hostage at that time. So I started engaging from the very beginning. Senator Budd has been very engaged with Aviva Siegel, and knowing that her husband Keith is still held. So yes, we will continue to encourage the Prime Minister to get the hostages freed. I can only imagine the agony that those families are going through right now. There were a few of us that were able to go to the floor yesterday, Democrats and Republicans, and speak the names of our hostages and talk a little bit about their backgrounds. So we all recognize that this is very, very important to get done for these families. They are Americans. We need to recognize that. They are our fellow countrymen. So yes, we will continue to encourage. They say pressure. We would say encourage that the families get their loved ones back soon. I know that it's one thing that I've experienced with my Jewish friends is that there's a hashtag out there, bring them home now. And I support that movement. We need to bring them home now. But I would also remind everyone, and this came from a Jewish friend of mine, said think about the Bible, our Bible, and think about Pharaoh, and the cry to the Pharaoh, let my people go, okay? He said, apply that to Hamas. Hamas, let our people go. So it's not the Prime Minister that is holding hostage these Americans. It is Hamas that's holding them hostage. So I know there's a level of frustration with the war in general coming from the families. But we need to remember our anger needs to be directed at Hamas, who murdered and raped innocent civilians. They are the ones that drug the bodies, because we now know that some of these hostages were killed at their kibbutz, at the music festival. Their bodies were dragged into Gaza, already deceased. They need to come home. We know that. But it's Hamas that is holding them.
One more question.
One more. Yes, right there. Thank you.
There's a video circulating online from the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia Palestinian youth movement. They claim that they put maggots and mealworms on banquet tables at the Watergate Hotel where Netanyahu and the delegation are staying, and moved crickets into the hotel. Any reaction to that? Some of the rhetoric was very interesting.
Well, I think that the hotel should be very upset about that, and that's not a good discourse. So I think what they're doing is sullying their name. Those that want to protest need to do so in a manner where they're working towards a goal. And that, to me, is not constructive in working towards whatever their goal happens to be today. I mean, if it's to, play childish antics, then they've succeeded. But we need to have good political discourse here, and that's not helpful towards good political discourse. And to treat a friend and ally in that manner to the United States is not helpful. So that would be my response. As a mom, I'd be swatting my daughter on the rear end if she had done something like that.
We're here to express strong support for Israel. We're here also to express strong support for Prime Minister Netanyahu. I want to be very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.